to opening day for Green River College 2019. Let's hear it. Wow, I wish you could see how you look from this vantage point, but it would take too long for each of you to have a turn. So take it from me. You look fantastic. I said to Sarah and Russell last night as we went to a restaurant in torrential downpour, welcome to Pacific Northwest and our beautiful fall weather. But they did see rainbows last night, and there was a rainbow this morning as well. I take that as a symbol and a sign of what a bright day we're about to have today. My goal is to get us through some introductory things and some important thank yous, and set the stage for the day that we're going to have. We're so grateful for Sara Goldrick-Rab and Russell Lowry Hart being here, and I'll give them proper introductions in due time this morning. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, I'm Suzanne Johnson. I have the honor of serving as this college's president. Thank you. And we're starting our third year together. Who could guess that? Wow, it's been 2 years. Thank you for having me, and thank you for keeping me. I appreciate that a whole lot. And what an amazing school. What an amazing college. What an amazing group of people. We are the culture and the college that Green River provides for our students moving in and out of their days with us. Well, as you know, here's the longest part of my speech this morning. It takes a village to build an opening day. And I just want to preface this by saying I apologize if I mess up anybody's name. But I have a number of people to thank for making this day possible. I'm just up here speaking the work and beginning the day that was work of so many people over last spring through the summer. So let me pay due respect for a number of people. Look at the okay, but it's big print, so don't worry. Opening Day Planning Committee. There was a whole bunch of staff and faculty that worked this past academic year in terms of what are we going to do to build on where we've been the past couple of years. So our Opening Day Committee consisted of Ben Lalofi, Chelsea Terra-Sissel, Dana McCauley, Danny Cravillo-Chang, Daniel Ferguson, Aaron Fernandez-Momer, Janie Haney, Jamie Fitzgerald, Jesse Schwartz, Jody Siegel, Kim Olson, Marcy Sims, Maricela Fleitas-Lear, Marwa Al-Musawi, Michael Moreno, Shveta Singh, and Vic Pahal. Please, if I've forgotten anybody, yell it out now, and I'll say I'm sorry. Okay. Along with that, though, along with that is we have an opening day logistics committee, and I can guarantee I don't have everybody's names because there were a whole bunch of people that were working the tables out there this morning, and I thought, I don't have their names on my list. So thank you to everybody that worked those tables out there today, helping you all get in here with all the materials that you need. But what I have on my list are the following: Suhu Tan, Patty Sherman, Chris Carlson, Corlin Simmons, Elaine Strickland, Tamara Schillpeter, Ariana Hoyt, Tammy, I'm sorry, I just did your name funny. Ariana Hoyt, Lindsay Panoranda, Stacy Whitehouse, David Larson, Carl Smith, Michelle Fujimoto, Keegan O'Connor, Phil Denman, and Kim Olson. It does take a village, but it's more. One book committee, which, as you know, last year, as well as this year somewhat, we've tried to overlap our efforts in terms of who our one book author will be, and you'll learn some more about that in just a moment, and the synergy between who we bring in as an author at this institution and what we're doing in opening day in terms of kicking it off and getting our minds oriented around priorities that we have as an institution. So I want to also thank our One Book Committee: Janie Haney, Marcy Sims, Amanda Schaefer, Richard Pottisbay, Katie Cunyon, Jamie Fitzgerald, Erica Nelson, James Pyle, Aaron Fernandez-Momer, Danny Cravillo-Chang, Daniel Ferguson, and Tony Ingstrom. But also to make this day possible, Media Services and College Relations, holy cow. When you look at that folder, and we're going to talk about the folder in just a moment, we had some amazing work happening over the past number of weeks, and we've got some amazing stuff happening with our media staff today making this day possible. But special thanks to Michelle Fujimoto, Keegan O'Connor, Julie Spires, Jason Alquist, Peter Gunmanson, and Carl Smith. But there's more. In terms of our AV setup today, Chris Carlson and Sal Salaguento. I didn't see Sal walking around, but I know he's lurking somewhere out there. In terms of event logistics, Patty Sherman, Ashley Bretzenhoff. In terms of our food service today, I know you had more than bacon, right? And there's lunch to come. There's lunch to come. We have Lindsay Oakley, Alicia Evich, Krista Herner, Demetrius Crawford is our chef. Yeah. And in the back of the house, we've got Tammy, Holly, and Brian. Bookstore, I want to thank Anne-Marie Vinson and Melissa Garland. And would be horrible of me to not recognize the fact that we've got maintenance staff that work this building and custodial staff. And so for our maintenance, big shout out to Chris Moe over here, Juan Cabrera, and our custodial staff, we've got Mac Litton, Cindy Olson, and Michael Clark. And Michael was cleaning up coffee over there earlier. Thank you for making this kind of day possible. And we're going to talk about the flyers in just a moment, but we have a lot of participants that help create important information for all of us as members of this community and of this family of Green River. So we have Vic Bahal, Marwa Al-Musawi, Aaron Fernandez-Momer, Michael Moreno, Maricela Fleitas-Lear, Jody Siegel, Suzanne McCudden, Kelsey Denton, Allison Warner, and David Larson. It takes a village. It takes a village. And of course, thank you all for being here today, recognizing the importance of our work together and being able to share community for a full day. This is our commitment to each other. This is our commitment to each other for our students. And it would be remiss of me not to thank especially Suzanne McCudden, who had to listen for the past 3 months, telling her every day, I am not an event planner. Which, I think she hoped that I would have learned from last summer saying that, but yet again, she survived 3 months of me saying, I'm not an event planner. Thank you, Suzanne, for everything you do and dealing with me every day. And again, thank you, Sarah and Russell, for being here this morning. We've had this quote out and about since the fall of 2017, soon after I arrived. And I think all of the names I mentioned, and again, I know that there were so many more of you that were involved in creating this day. We are stronger together. Diversity is our strength. Imagine what we can do if we come together with a clarity of mission and purpose. This is what we do, and this is what we're doing, and this is what we will continue to do. You have on your tables today this quotation. Remind ourselves of this. Often, I look at it almost every day, especially on those days when we have to work through conflict and difference, and recognize that we are an amazing group, and what we decide to do together will be unsurpassed by any other. So, I have some special introductions I'd like to provide to all of you. Some are here currently, some will be here during the day, but I want you to know that what we're doing here is getting a lot of attention from our communities, our elected officials in our communities, our K-12 partners, our legislature, as well as our foundation, of which we have many people here from our foundation today, and also our Board of Trustees. So let me please take a moment to introduce to you, and just stand if you're here, give a wave. I'll continue because some will come a bit later. We will have Nancy Backus, our Auburn mayor, here today at some time. I know Jan Molinaro, our mayor of Enumclaw, is in the house. Saw him earlier, thank you. Dana Ralph, our mayor from Kent, will be here later for our lunchtime. Damien Patino from Renton Schools, superintendent, will probably be here during the day. I know we have 3 individuals from Auburn Schools present. Tom McDermott, Isaiah Johnson, and Monty Eckelman. They are both here from Auburn Schools. Alan Spicchiotti is out of town. He wished he could be here, but thank you for being here from our Auburn schools. We also will have the assistant to our legislature, Deborah Intaman. Simran Chabara will be here at some point during the day. Our foundation board. We have a number of members here today. Bob Folson, I believe, is in the house. Charles Reynolds, Gail Spurrell, and Bob Spurrell are here. Please wave. Jim Barrios, the chair of our foundation. Jim Tanas will be here. Nancy Colson, Lynn Norman, John Schneider, Chuck Folson, Bruce DeJong. And we also have a special guest this morning, Jim Keller, who is the foundation chair at the University of Vermont, who is interested in what's happening at Green River. We were able to get him. He actually is connected to the Spurrells. And I'm delighted for you to be here and see what a community college does in terms of the American dream and changing lives forever. Thank you for being here. And for our trustees today, we have Jackie Boschek, our chair of the board. And we have trustee Linda Cowan. And I know at some point today, we will also have Arlene Perini and Sharon Navas. Elaine Chu is busy working at the Seattle Foundation, and she will be watching the video. The other thing I would also like to acknowledge today, and please mark your calendars, Thursday at 2 o'clock, I forgot the room. Service Awards. It's right here. Okay, Thursday at 2 o'clock, we will be having an awards reception beginning at 2 o'clock, and we will be honoring a variety of people. Our service award recipients, as well as our distinguished faculty and outstanding staff awards winners, and also we will have a new element to our culture, in memoriam, for those of our Green River College family whom we lost the prior year. I think that's a wonderful contribution. So humor me just for a moment. You'll notice that there are people in our audience that have, well, we all have name tags except me. I refuse to wear it. But you all have name tags, and a number of people that have a name tag have a colored dot on them. Okay? So here's the mystery. It's not actually a game for later. Here's the key to the colored dots. Anyone that has a gold dot on, could you please stand? The gold dot represents 35 years of service. Woo! Please keep standing. I'm going to add to it. For those of you who have silver dots, please stand. That is 30 years of service. Orange dots, please remain standing. Orange dots, please stand up. 25 years of service. Pink dots. Anybody with a pink dot, please stand. 20 years of service. Purple dots, 15 years of service. Yellow dots, 10 years of service. Yeah. And red dots, 5 years. Woo! We will be honoring all of you Thursday from 2 to 4:30 that precedes our Board of Trustees meeting. Please come, please bring your friends in your neighborhood of the offices and enjoy that reception. We will also be acknowledging our distinguished faculty award recipients, and I know I saw at least 2 people in the audience that are receiving these awards. That would be Danny Nahara, Rob Jonas, and Diana Holes. Give a big shout out for them. And then I have in my hand here some official announcements. I am unveiling some important announcements. I have the Outstanding Staff Award recipients for this year. Do we have a drum roll? All right. We have 2 individuals at the college that are going to be receiving an Outstanding Staff Award. I know that they do not know. I know that I'm the one that's saying this. And we also have a team that's going to be winning an Outstanding Staff Award. Our individual recipients of the Outstanding Staff Award for this year is Payan Gilji from Facilities Office Manager, and Crystal Bolt Our purchasing, procurement, and supply specialist, Payan and Crystal, congratulations. Hope to see you there on Thursday. And the team award goes to our IP housing team, Emily Fendley, Jude Gow, and Teresa Terrell. Holy moly. Lots of stuff happening at this college. What an amazing day we have ahead. This morning we'll be with Sara Goldrick-Rab, and then we'll have some lunch. In the afternoon will be Russell Lowry Hart. You will find that in your folder. And since we're talking about a folder here, I'd like to bring to your attention the materials. Let's look inside your folders. First thing you're going to find is a lovely, postable outside your doors or in your office area of all kinds of activities happening this year in terms of our So Just film series, our One Book, our diversity education series, our a global talk series, and also our inclusive pedagogy workshop series this year. You will also find, and wow, this one, take with you, keep it with you. This is one of the most amazing pieces of work that was the reflection of many across our campus. This is a resource guide to help our students. This is for you, the faculty and the staff of this institution, to become informed of what resources we have. It's the one that's folded in half, right? What resources we have, what kinds of issues it helps the student with, and how to get the students to this help. Major theme of this morning, I'm sure. Please keep that when you need more. We're going to make more. Also in your folder is information about the One Book activities through our fall term, our Brown Bag series. Thank you, Jody Siegel, for all that you do for our One Book program. Yes. Also in your folder are the events that will happen when our One Book author is in town in the wintertime, January, February. So please mark your calendar for that. Imbolo Imbwe. Behold the Dreamers. We'll talk about crossing borders in just a moment. Also in your folder, we have a handout for the film series, our education equity series, again, the global talks, some references for you in terms of student affairs. See, don't leave those folders behind. They were made with intentionality. And, well, shameless self-promotion. No. Please follow me on Twitter at GRCPresJohnson. We're moving into our second season of Gator Cast. I'm happy to tell you that Russell and Sara have agreed to, at some point during the year, be some guests on that Gator Cast. But on the back side of that are all the meetings and things that we have planned for this year, are all faculty, are all college meetings, the afternoon, mornings with the president, and so on. Hopefully that's very helpful in terms of your planning. And there are index cards in your folder as well. So this morning when Sara's here and talking with us, there will be question and answer session after her keynote. So as you're sitting, if there's a particular question that you want to have asked and you don't want to go to a microphone, which we do have set up around the room, you can write that question down. And as Sara and I get situated on the stage after her keynote, we'll have some runners go around, collect green cards if you'd like to hand your question in, and we'll try to get through as many questions as possible during that Q&A time period. So that's why you have index cards. There's one for Russell's time as well, but if you use them both for Sara, we'll get you more cards. I saw we have a big, huge stack of green cards. Okay. All right. So let's talk about our day together. Intersections, crossing borders in education. Wow, there's a statement. How many borders do students cross to come in and through Green River College? There are many different meanings that we can generate for that. Crossing borders in terms of us as a college, within our areas, across the silos, across the divisions, across the departments or areas of an institution. For our students, how many borders? How many borders? First generation, economic borders, gender, class, race borders, language borders. There are many borders in education. And of course, we chose that title. The One Book and the Opening Day Planning Committee honed in on that title because it represented so many things to them as well. Think about Green River College. We have Running Start students. We have BAS students. We are a community college at heart, but we do so much more. And we also thought about our one book author, Behold the Dreamers. So there's a synergy there, both internal and external to us. We are the culture that Green River College students come in and out of. We need to examine ourselves to be the best Green River for them. There's continuity here. In 2017-18, my first year with you, we spent a whole year with town halls looking at quantitative data. We looked at quantitative data in terms of retention and completion. We looked at the compelling case our school has in the context of our service area. And we recognized the significance and the imperative of education for economic mobility and opportunity. This past year, we focused in on qualitative data. We started with C. Nicole Mason at this event a year ago in terms of the power of the personal narrative, the individual person's story. We listened to students' lived experiences, and we also turned our qualitative examination on ourselves by looking at our cultural climate survey in terms of employees, as well as looking at the deconstruction of the red dots. The 120 committees that are out there spinning and doing good work, but not connected to anything. What are we doing? And that's a work to continue. We have so much to celebrate. We have accomplished so many things, and there will be time to reflect on those celebrations at the State of the College Address, and I'll be sending you a welcome email. And I realized, I shared with IC yesterday, I cannot send any kind of email out college-wide and expect it to be looked at until at least the end of the second week of classes. So expect a note from me, the end of the second week of classes, beginning of the third week of classes, in hopes that you'll have a moment to breathe and read. So we will have plenty of time to talk about those things. And we have important work to do together moving forward, thus Sara and Russell. So here we are. What are the borders and barriers? We're going to learn more about ourselves today, hopefully than we knew before. And we're going to have some very clear steps of what we do next in our continuous work to be the best Green River College we can be. I have a question for all of you. What would you attempt to do if you knew you would not fail? Just take a moment. And I know some of you are like, do you mean personally or professionally? Pick it. Doesn't matter. I mean, if I said personally, I'd say probably, oh, it would be great to run a marathon. Somehow I think that that would be kind of a cool thing to say I've done. It also makes me feel like I'd rather shove needles in my eyes and feel better. Not to take away from, where's Mickey? Sorry, Mickey's going all over the place running marathons. But, and I'm sure many of you run marathons. But I mean, I think that would be kind of cool. If I knew I wouldn't fail at a marathon or die in the process, I'd probably like to do that. But let's talk about this professionally. What would you attempt to do if you knew you would not fail? Here's my answer. And I've been saying it since the middle of the first year I got here with you, and even more specific, last opening day. I said, if we could be the best Green River College we could be, we would be the first choice in post-secondary education. We would be the first partner thought of in terms of business and industry, in terms of pathways to careers. We would be able to minimally double our completion and close equity gaps, without question. And we could stop any student out in that quad and ask, do you feel like you belong at Green River College? And every single time we would hear yes. And if we asked them, can you name a person that would care if you didn't come back tomorrow? Not only would they name one, they'd have a whole list of people. I know we won't fail. That's my dream. And that is what we're doing. That is what we're doing. We have a strategic planning process that will begin this year. Mid-year, we'll talk about that more concretely. Let's do it, Green River. Let's do it. there's nothing that's stopping us. So, with that, let me do a proper introduction to Sara Goldrick-Rab. And actually, I learned something earlier this morning. You know how I'm a selfie queen? Guess who's a selfie king? I would humor me. We did this last year. Russell and Sara, would you join us up here on the stage for a moment? Can you hand me my phone? Now, this is only going to work well if you all wave. So we are going to do Sara and Russell. We discovered that Russell has to be in the middle, and he's got the longest arms. So he said, you know, I always take selfies at the beginning of these things before I do something. I'm like, oh, I'm so relieved, because I was feeling embarrassed to say, we have to do a selfie today, because I did one last year, and it was kind of cool last year, but now it's boring. So I'm using Russell as the excuse. So we're gonna turn around, and we're gonna do a selfie. And if you can all wave, Russell's going to give the high sign in terms of when you should wave. And come on in the middle here, buddy. All right. All right, get ready.
All right, everybody wave.
Woo! All right. Thank you.
Get ready. I'm going to tweet that to 33,000
Right.
people.
And if you'd like to stay, you can stay right here. Yeah. Sara said get ready. She's going to tweet that to how many people?
33,000.
33,000 followers, so get ready to be tweeted to the world. So let me, with great pleasure, introduce Sara Goldrick-Rab. She has a PhD as a professor of higher education policy and sociology at Temple University and founding director of the Hope Center for College, Community, and Justice in Philadelphia. She is also the Chief Strategy Officer for Emergency Aid at Equity, a student financial success and emergency aid company, and founded Believe in Students, a nonprofit distributing emergency aid. Sara is best known for her innovative research on food and housing insecurity in higher education, having led the 4 largest national studies on the subject, and for her work on making public higher education free. She is the recipient of the William T. Grant Foundation's Faculty Scholars Award, the American Educational Research Association's Early Career Award, and the Carnegie Fellowship. In 2016, Politico magazine named her one of the top 50 people shaping American politics, and she is ranked 6th in the nation among education scholars, according to Education Week. Her latest book, Paying the Price, College Cost, Financial Aid, and the Betrayal of the American Dream, won the 2018 Grawemeyer Award and was featured on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. The Chronicle of Higher Education calls Sara a defender of impoverished students and a scholar of their struggles, which is a very accurate description of her life's work. I am so pleased and honored to welcome Sara Goldrick-Rab to our college and to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're amazing. Really. Okay, well, I just have to say, I travel almost every week. I'm on a different community college campus almost every week. I've never seen anything like this. She's unbelievable. The last time that I said that about a president, by the way, it was this guy. And so you're just really in for a treat today. I have never gotten to be Russell's opening act. But I really have been looking forward to this ever since I got the invitation. And I want to say it's my first time here. I hope it won't be my last. I'm going to let you all know a little bit today about some of the work that my team at the Hope Center is actually just starting to do with your institution, along with a bunch of others in the area. And I have had the opportunity to do a decent bit of work here over the last 3 to 4 years in particular, and in particularly proud to be friendly with your representative, Drew Hansen, who has really understood the importance of community colleges and students here and made some pretty substantial investments in your work. So I am, pleased as heck to be part of this opening day. And, I'm going to try to give you a sense of the bigger landscape and the bigger picture that you're working within as a start. Because I do think that especially when you're in the daily grind, when you're going into the classroom every day and you're just doing the lecturing and doing the exercises and doing the grading, it's easy to kind of lose track of that bigger picture. But then I'm going to get into some of the more tangible daily stuff that I think that you can engage in, and then I know that Russell will take it from there. So hope that gives you a sense of my map. First, I want to talk a little bit about why today's students are coming to college. And it's important, I think, to ground ourselves in the evidence of why today's students are coming to college, because there is so much chatter out there that's inaccurate. If you turn on the TV, you'll hear that students these days are just sort of wandering aimlessly through higher education without any direction, without sufficient motivation, and frankly, they're making bad choices. If they're not graduating from college, it must be because they're not working hard or they're not sufficiently motivated. The quotes on the screen come from 20 years of research where my team has been out there interviewing students, not only about what they go through, but why they're there. And those data reveal a very different picture than we hear in the popular media. They reveal that people are coming to college in search of a better life, in search of some financial stability. I mean, let's be honest, they don't think that college payoff is going to make them rich. They don't think they're going to get a big house and a fast car. They're just really hoping that they're going to become a little more okay. That from month to month, they'll know they have their job and that they're going to be able to pay their bills. And I think that this stands in some contrast to students of prior generations. They're not really coming to you merely as individuals. They're coming to you as families. And they're coming to you as part of their communities. And so when they talk about why they're in college, so many of them reference children. There are 4.3 million college students now with children. There are so many who reference a sister or a brother or a cousin or an aunt or a parent, all of whom are counting on them to complete whatever it is they came here to do. And you all know better than most that there's a variety of things they could be here to do. I'm definitely not here to talk only about bachelor's degrees and their payoff. And I'm not going to suggest that a certificate is somehow less than, because the data are quite clear. If a student can get even a one-year certificate, they can begin to advance on a road towards that decent and stable life. But they really are different than the way that we tend to talk about them. Even the 18-year-olds. Now, and I know you've got dual enrollment, so I'm just not going to go there for a moment. There's a 16-year-old in my inbox right now who's really upset that our real college surveys don't include him at 16. And I had to explain the legal reasons, which is that I have to get his parents' permission to even survey him. Look, even many of the 16-year-olds, though, even the 17-year-olds, even the 18-year-olds who look increasingly young for someone who's been in higher ed for a while, even they are not kids. And I say that to you both to sort of give me a chance to talk about why that's happened, but also to ask you to remind yourselves, as you're talking about today's students, as you refer to the things that you do here, to strike the word kids from your conversation. Because kids is a way of talking about people that sort of undermines the strength and authority that they bring to their daily life. I do wish in many ways they were more kid-like, though, because the real reason that they're not kids is that the conditions of life in this country have become so difficult that we have adultified people from a very young age. So many people who walk through your doors here have been working from a very young age. I mean, some of them as early as maybe 10 years old. And they've been contributing and helping their families pay their bills. And they've grown up at a time when most of the support programs that were around in the 1970s are now gone. So this new world of higher education, this new world is really different than that of the past. And it is a far cry from the kinds of colleges and universities that get covered in places like the New York Times. My team calls this real college. And we invite you to join us in using that terminology because it's a way of describing the situation and the facts facing students without calling them needy, without simply demarking them low income, right? They are real college students fighting for very real things at a moment in time where they get so much less support. Now, why are they getting so much less support, and why is your work, to be really honest, so much more difficult than it would have been if you... I was amazed to see some of you who've been here 30, 35 years. I think that's tremendous. You know, if you go back and you think through how the college has changed in that time, I'm sure you're going to think and see the dynamics that I'm about to describe. One of the reasons, and it's the most discussed reason, that the economics today of today's colleges are so different than in the past, of course, is that prices are higher. And we talk about that all the time. Tuition obviously gets the bulk of the attention. But it's really not just that tuition has gone up, right? The real story of why prices have gone up in higher education has at least as much to do with the rising price of rent, the rising price of food, the rising price of transportation, medical expenses. All of those things are part of the cost of attendance. And while that's just become a bit of a popular thing to say, right, it's not only tuition, it's always been true. In fact, it's baked in to the federal definition of the cost of attendance, which has been in place since the 1970s. Those prices have gone up, and financial aid has not kept pace, at least in part because we treat those other things as if they were quote-unquote non-educational expenses. Non-educational expenses. Things that seem like luxury items to people. Ask yourself, if a student was in your classroom and they couldn't afford to do laundry, might you begin to find them a disruption? That's what a dean at Miami-Dade told me several years ago when I went to go interview her. She said that we had to delay the start of our meeting because she needed to find a way to help a student whose professor had called her and said, he clearly hasn't washed in days. His clothes are dirty. And students are complaining. How many deans are trained to go and help take that student from their classroom? And how many deans are like her who have a washer and dryer in her dean's office and an extra clothes so that they can help the student immediately? When we talk about rising prices, we got to talk about all that. Second issue, what's happened to families? Now, this is not the first moment in American history where people have said college is unaffordable, but it certainly is the time when we're saying it the loudest. You got to ask yourselves why. You know, starting in about 1981, the federal government began to make some very different decisions. David Stockman was Ronald Reagan's budget director. In 1981, he proudly proclaimed that if somebody wanted to be able to go to college, well, they really ought to do it themselves. We really should, he argued, give them grants to do it. If we were going to give them anything, we should give them loans. Most people didn't notice. You didn't hear an outcry. And the reason is that the people who were going to college at that time, in general, had some money. And even the middle class, who were starting to send their children to college and higher rates, they thought, you know, we're getting by pretty well, and year after year we get a raise, so if tuition goes up, we'll make it work. Fast forward 10 years, we get to the mid-90s, and let's be honest, the government is still continuing with the same basic set of policies. It's not investing in grants, it's really investing in just providing more loans, and you still don't hear an outcry. And it's because for all income groups, again, people were getting ahead. And then we get to this century. And as I think many of you know all too well, people are just not getting ahead like they used to. In fact, there's stagnation and even decline in well-being from year to year. And if we really want to talk about equity, we got to understand that since the Great Recession, African American wealth in this country has been decimated by more than half. So when we talk about the news stories, like a man getting up at Morehouse College and proudly proclaiming that he's going to take care of the debt for all of those HBCU graduates, how many of us trace that back to the enormous racial disparities in family financial strength and the effects of our policy decisions? Third issue related to the new economics of college that most of us in higher education don't know much about. I want you to be really honest with me, especially those of you who've been teaching here for a long time. Back in around 1994, we started having major national conversations about ending welfare as we know it. President Bill Clinton ran on the idea that this is what he was going to do. How many of you were paying attention to the changes in welfare reform and thinking about how they might affect community colleges? Anybody? All right, here's the thing. That policy had a major effect on community colleges. That change redefined a woman's ability, usually a woman, ability to get cash assistance to support herself and her children, saying that she'd have to work in order to do it, and that college didn't count as work. It also redefined what did count as education for poor women. In particular, it said only short-term job training programs. At the time, most America's community colleges did not specialize in those. But you know who did? The for-profit colleges and universities. And so with a single move, federal policy began to direct a flow of resources into for-profit institutions, pushing a large number of people with less money and people of color into those institutions. And most of us said nothing. That's because we're not trained to think about social policy as education policy. We're taught right now that if you're paying attention to anything in Washington, you're paying attention to the reauthorization of the Higher Education Act. Perfect, great, you should. But you should also be paying attention every time the Farm Bill comes up. You want to be thinking about whether your students are going to be able to get access to SNAP. You want to be paying attention to any legislation affecting housing. Because I've heard constantly since I got here that you all want more affordable housing. So how many people are paying attention and writing to your Congress folks about the low-income housing tax credit and how it systematically excludes full-time college students? That's a key part of the new economics of college. One more key part that I know you all are living and have lived. How many of you work during college? Virtually everybody, okay? And it's not new. It's not like students these days work and students didn't used to work. Students have always worked during college. What's changed is what the work looks like. Today's students work longer hours. Today's students are more likely to work the graveyard shift to pick up an extra buck or two per hour, or because that's the only job that they can find. Today's students are going to be more likely to compete with other people to get the limited number of hours that they need. And then there are the more subtle changes. So when I was working during college, my parents had saved just enough to cover 1 year of tuition. After that, I was pretty much on my own, and I decided to start waiting tables. I didn't have a ton of experience thinking through how to make the best tips. So I sort of naively began working at a pizza joint, and serving pizza doesn't make much. And then for some reason, I switched to pancakes. Right, so like for $3 on the check, what do you think I got, right? A couple, maybe a quarter. And then I switched to burgers. Monday night burgers, which was a twofer night. So again, the checks became like $10. And then I finally discovered cocktails. And if you can put up with what it means to be a cocktail waitress, you can put yourself through college. Well, you used to. Because back then, when I was a cocktail waitress, I would strap on the little apron, go out there and put up with it for a good 5, 6, 7, 8 hours into the middle of the night. And I would come home with a wad of cash in my apron. Cash, because that's how people tipped. Think about the last time that you tipped in cash. The key difference, it's not just that I get to immediately come home with that cash, it's that I didn't report it to the IRS. So I made more money per hour. Think about what's happening now. When you don't tip that way, you've effectively reduced their per hour take home. And the tip minimum wage has not increased. So it literally has become harder to do even what we've considered college-type jobs during college. Last issue, and I'm going to stipulate to this because it's absolute fact. I know people have a hard time in this country believing that colleges are under-resourced. Almost all of them are, and community colleges absolutely are. And we now finally have an official report from the Century Foundation issued this past spring that demonstrates the inadequate funding of community colleges. When we say inadequate, what we mean is you all have a job to do. It takes resources to move a student from entrance to and through to a degree, and you are getting demonstrably too little funding on a per student basis to really do that work. We get what we pay for. We get the completion rates that we pay for. And that's really why I was so pleased to see a bill that actually paired changing the price of college for students with investments in the colleges themselves. But that isn't common. I commented in the New York Times on your legislation because of how incredibly uncommon it is to see a state making those moves. And I know there's still a long way to go. Another major issue that we face is how we silence the realities that are so important to students that bring them to college, but that make it so difficult for them to succeed. Take a look. The man who's being quoted here was 18 years old when he started college. We met him just a few weeks after he began. He'd received his financial aid package, and we asked him to begin with the same question we ask everyone when we first meet them: how's it going? And the response to how's it going was not about his math class, was not about, how many credits he was taking, wasn't even about the FAFSA. We get a lot of FAFSA comments, as though you can imagine. He talked about the trouble he was having paying for his mom's bills while he was going to school. We found that despite the rhetoric of the financial aid system, the rhetoric that says, here is your expected family contribution, the assumption that somebody is paying on your behalf just because you have parents. Our study of Pell Grant recipients found that 40% of them were helping to fund their families. Now, I look at that and I actually think these people are wonderful. Like, I don't know if my kids are going to do that for me, right? I hope they do, but this is actually a hallmark of how people scrape by when they don't have enough. You pull on everyone, right? You even make people who aren't actually your family members, you kind of do what Carol Stack called going for kin, which means calling a friend an auntie and bringing her into the economic fold to make sure that we all get through. And then you finally make it to college, right? Having scraped by all those years, only to be told this is a non-educational expense. This silences so much about their lives, and it makes them so afraid to say out loud what's really going on. So the next time you see a student who looks like they have a full financial aid package, which is still incredibly rare, but they look like they should have everything they need, and they don't. I want you to remember that they might be helping to keep the lights on, even at a place they don't currently reside at. So what does this teach us? Well, I sum it all up with the Wu-Tang. Okay? You didn't see that coming, did you? All right. I thank the students so much for this because they brought the Wu-Tang into my life. Now, it's been since 2008, and this is really a throwback, but there is no substitute for cream, right? Cash rules everything around me describes today's college student experience so well. Cash rules everything around me. That woman's up there lecturing, and all I can think about is how I'm going to keep the heat on, right? Cash rules everything around me, and, I got to go pick up my kid from daycare, otherwise they charge me an extra couple bucks because I'm late. This reality, this scarcity, has cognitive effects. There's a wonderful book called Scarcity. You can look it up. This guy demonstrates that when people are faced with a lack of money, it actually changes sort of how they think. It's the reason why when you say to somebody, well, yeah, I see you got all these bills to pay and whatever, but you just need to think rationally. They're not being irrational for the situation that they're in, and their brain is actually kind of got something sitting on it, where it's harder to forecast long-term thinking. It's much easier to fall into depression. And it's because of cream. It's not for a lack of talent or hard work. So the great thing about this is if we get rid of cream, their talent can actually be realized. It's all reversible. It can take a while. I mean, if somebody's been homeless for a year, living this cream life, and you suddenly get them housing, they're not going to turn around the next day and start getting A's. But if you give them 6 months, you give them 8 months, they might. So that's what I need to talk about next, because higher education managed to spend about 50 years providing Pell Grants, which are very nice but not getting the job done, and not talking about Maslow. So I want to start by talking about food insecurity. And I understand I'm getting really used to talking about food over food, right? So, don't feel badly. Everybody who talks about food insecurity loves food. We all get together and have meals and talk about, the lack there, and it's because we understand, right? We got to talk about food because food matters. If you hadn't had breakfast this morning, that's what you'd be thinking about right now. You would not be thinking about the slides up here. Food insecurity is assessed by the United States Department of Agriculture in a very specific way. They don't use the term hunger because it's possible to not have enough to eat and yet not call yourself hungry, and because they're trying to draw attention to the conditions of poverty that actually leads someone to not have secure access to nutritious and affordable food on a daily basis. Now, they offer a 2-item scale, a 6, a 10, and an 18. It's just a buffet for us researchers. And I've tried all of them. And what we're doing now, and we're doing right here, right now, going out to your students this fall, is the 18-item scale, which includes a 10-item for the adult and a series of additional 8 questions if they have a child in their household. The questions are up here, and it proceeds the way that it came up on the screen. So first, the student is asked about the things that have happened to them in the last 30 days. For each of these items, they get to say whether this happened to them often, sometimes, or never in the last 30 days. I mean, ask yourself these questions, right? Did you ever in the last 30 days worry whether your food would run out before you got money to buy more? Okay. Could you not afford to eat balanced meals? Now, there are a lot of people who are getting by, right, on not very nutritious stuff. I mean, we all know that, Whole Foods is whole paycheck. So there are going to be a number of people, right, in this country, and who have always been in college, right, who are eating ramen. And they mainly say, I can't afford to eat balanced meals. And sometimes they talk about number 1, the worry. They don't tend to talk about literally running out of food before they can get money to buy more. But let's say they do say yes to those first 2 questions. As you can see here, they're going to get a score of 2 on a scale of 1 to 10. And they're going to be classified as marginally food secure. That is not in the the food insecure category, according to the USDA. Only if they say yes to at least one of these questions up here do they continue. And they're asked, did you cut the size of your meals or skip meals? If you did that at least once in the last 30 days, we ask if you did it 3 or more times. That gets you an extra point. Did you eat less than you felt you should? Were you hungry but didn't eat because there wasn't enough money for food? Did you lose weight? This one's really controversial. For those of you that are not familiar with the science, it is equally possible to both gain weight and to lose weight due to food insecurity. All right? I'm going to let the scientists who do that nutrition stuff battle that out. I'm not going to take it on for college students. But suffice it to say, we do get a couple of people every time we put out a report on food insecurity who say, boy, are they full of it, because look at the freshman 15, right? Well, guess what? There might actually be a piece of the freshman 15 that's explained by the lack of access to affordable and nutritious food. This one's, of course, devastating. Students being asked, was there a time in the last 30 days where you didn't eat for a whole day? And did that happen at least 3 times? We add up all of the things. Unbelievably, they're all weighted the same. We also, though, in any report, get to give you each item individually. But if you're hearing a statistic that says X% of college students are food insecure, you need to know that it means they said yes to at least 3 of those 10 items. Now, let's talk about the security of their housing. Another really difficult issue. We know that lots of college students have traditionally lived in suboptimal conditions. But housing insecurity can compromise academic performance. And we measure it the way that the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development and many of their studies assess it. This is not what they call homelessness. This is what they call housing insecurity. So difficulty paying your rent, difficulty paying your utilities. Many folks don't realize, and I only recently learned, that that is one of the leading indicators of homelessness. The inability to pay your utilities, then when things start to get cut off, people end up leaving their homes. Okay? Another serious issue, interpersonal violence, leaving your home because you feel unsafe, frequent moving. When these things are going on, students are going to have trouble in the classroom. We assess the whole series, and if they say yes to even one of those, we mark them as housing insecure. And then there's homelessness. The Department of Housing and Urban Development has one definition, and if you look across the United States government as a whole, there are 6 different federal definitions. We have decided that it's important that we align with the rest of the educational institutions in this country in thinking about these challenges. The K-12 schools not only want to know, is a student sleeping in a shelter or is a student sleeping in a car, but they want to know if a student is couch surfing. And they want to know that because that is not a good way to get a good night's sleep. It's not fun. It's not just something you do on a weekend. Right? If I said to you that a 12-year-old was couch surfing, I think you would probably quickly agree with me that we don't want that to happen. Somehow, though, if I say a 21-year-old is couch surfing, people start kind of going, I could think of this story, I could think of that story. So we've collected the stories. And we're not finding couch surfing to be any kind of fun. I spent 2 years working with a woman named Mary Baxter, who was 36 when I first met her. She was at the Community College of Philadelphia. And she was pursuing an associate degree. She had a 9-year-old boy, and they were living in a place where the rent was affordable for her, but unfortunately it was falling into disrepair. The landlord did not want to repair the many holes in the floor. She insisted, given she had a child there, that they needed to make these changes, and instead of helping her, the landlord threw them out. They had nowhere to go. She couldn't find any other affordable place to be, and so they began staying on the cousin's couch, staying on a friend's couch. She didn't find anyone who actually had a spare room. She's not wealthy, and most people are already quite full up. And they would go to the next place for a night, and the 2 of them would sleep end to end on a couch. Mary is 6'2", end to end on a regular standard couch with a 9-year-old boy. She'd show up for class the next morning and promptly fall asleep in that classroom. This was going on for 9 months before anyone at her college knew. They just assumed like so many, that if she was sleeping in class, it's because she wasn't interested. I got involved at that point because I met her by happenstance, and I'll tell you what, I seem like the kind of person who ought to be able to get her housed, but I'm not. I fought Philadelphia's homeless system. I called all my friends. Doesn't anybody have a room for this woman? And excuse after excuse after excuse came up. And it took 5 months until we finally found her a room, and things began to calm down in their life. And she got her associate degree. And she graduated and went on and did more, and her son is now doing well in school. But for the longest time, she was just viewed as a couch surfer, and who cares? So if they have slept in any of the following places, we mark them as homeless. Okay, so here's a situation in terms of finding out how many students are affected by these things. Does anybody happen to know from their own circumstance how many of your students are affected? Anybody an expert on that? I don't ever find anybody who is, because this is not the stuff that we've been asking ourselves questions about for years. And the federal government's not going to tell you because they've never bothered to collect that data. So my team's been going out year after year after year since 2015, begging college presidents to let us survey their students. And the first year that we asked, boy, oh boy, we got the Association of Community College Trustees to send out an invitation to do a survey for free. Right? We didn't charge a thing, to their entire listserv. And only 10 colleges said yes. But I am so glad they did. Because using the data from those 4,300 students, we wrote an op-ed in the New York Times, Hungry and Homeless in College. And it seems to have lit a little bit of a fire. Because we got notes from all over the country. We did not get one note. I was really hoping for a note from Bill Gates. Oh my goodness, we overlooked something. I think they're dropping out, right? And I think we need to address this. And that note did not come. But I got notes from so many people who said, listen, it's not in my job description, but I help our homeless students. And I've been doing this thing over here, and I started a food pantry. And these people didn't know about each other. And so we started bringing them together, and we started pushing and pushing to see if we could get access to more schools. And as you can see, we did. So I'm going to share some numbers now, and those numbers come from the 269 brave institutions. And it's all thanks to those presidents who said yes. They are overwhelmingly community colleges and public universities. Very, very few private institutions have let us in. Not one for-profit institution has let us in. And not one of what you might call elite institutions, let's just call them the places where they turn away far more students than they admit. They don't want this data collected. So when I show you the numbers, I want you to think about who's there and who's not. I really wonder what's happening in particular at those for-profit colleges. Now, like I said, you all are doing it this fall, so are all the community and technical colleges of Washington State, so it's great. Out in the spring, we'll be able to give you some results. Here's what we've seen so far. Again, these are ranges from across the years of the survey. I think everyone should be able to see a screen, I'm hoping. Bottom line, around half of the community college students had experienced food insecurity in the last 30 days. And more than a third of public university students had as well. Housing insecurity affects at least as many students as food insecurity does. And homelessness, our rates on the low end exclude couchsurfing and come from the time when we didn't include it. And our rates on the high end, which go up as high as around 18% for community colleges, include couchsurfing. It's not negligible anywhere. We have graphs in our report that show you the institutional variation, meaning if we took all those 269 colleges and we plotted them all in their ranges, would you have some that were just way below average and way above? No. One of the things I do every year when the data come in is I draw at random from the pile. I pick a college, I open the spreadsheet, and I see the same basic numbers that I see everywhere else. Went to Amarillo. I opened the data for Amarillo with Russell personally. It looked basically the same. A little worse on some things, a little better on other things. But what can we really call better with these numbers? Say to yourself, well, look, these are electronic surveys and the response rates are 10, 15, 20%. We'd have to tell ourselves a story. To make this okay, we'd have to believe that the homeless and hungry college students of America are jumping up and down to take my survey when it comes in their email, when it promises them not $1, no support, and doesn't mention food or housing when we pitch it to them. I have a really hard time believing that. And if we're off, I suspect it's an underestimate, particularly because we don't have the for-profit colleges in there. I'd like to think if we were doing national averages, those elite colleges would drive these numbers way down, but y'all know how few people actually get to go to those schools. A couple more things that are important to note. If you look, and this comes from our most recent year of data, most of the people who were food insecure are actually at the very bottom level. What that means, as I showed you earlier, remember the scale? You're food insecure, you're in these two if you said yes to at least 3 questions. This group said yes to at least 6. Okay, that's more than 1 in 4 community college students who are at the very lowest level of food security. These are the folks skipping meals, going hungry, not eating for a whole day or more. Data on homelessness are pretty darn clear about 2 things. Number 1, students who are homeless don't call themselves homeless. Neither do most of the people that you see, even those sleeping in tents. It's just not a word that people readily want to adopt. So if we use that in our messaging, we will fail to reach them. Second issue, they're not primarily in shelters. They're not primarily in cars. You probably have heard the discussion in California about whether we should have safe parking lots to allow students to park safely on campus. It's an interesting discussion. It's been fraught in many ways, but I think the most important part is that it represents just about 3% of the students. Now, I mean, 1 person is 1 too many for me, frankly, and if I opened up safe parking and it helped 5 people a night, I would probably do it. But we got to acknowledge that most of these students are couch surfing because they can't find affordable housing and figure that problem out. These things intersect. It is perfectly possible for a student over a given academic year to experience food insecurity, to experience housing insecurity, that then leads to homelessness. So we've asked ourselves, with all of those intersections, how many of our students are totally okay not going through this? And it's astonishing. Only 30% of them. When you think about that, think about the factors that we talk about affect student success. One of those big factors that we talk about all the time is remediation, right? If a student, goodness, if they're placed into remedial coursework, right, we know they're at enormous risk of not making it further. And that affects approximately maybe half to 60% of today's community college students. But we've had that conversation for how many years now? And never even considered an issue affecting 70% of the students. These issues of basic needs and security are probably affecting students as they sit down to take that placement exam. How many of us have ever wondered if before we start changing our teaching practices and rethinking how remediation is structured, we simply see what happens if they eat before they take the test? There are so many disparities. Our reports have lots and lots of information on all sorts of different racial ethnic categories, gender, sexuality. I'm just showing you a few highlights to give you a sense of what the disparities look like. It shouldn't surprise anyone who knows anything about how race, ethnicity maps onto poverty and maps onto educational attainment in this country to see these numbers. But I do think, especially for those of us that are used to hearing about the food pantry that is located in the support services for students of color, they need to also think about the fact that 39% of the white students have also dealt with food insecurity. And what does that mean? Homelessness We have a sizable number of students in these surveys who identify as transgender and a sizable number who do not pick any of the categories. Their rates of homelessness are much higher than students who identify as male or female. Now, there are those who wonder how that could be. But if you think for a moment about that FAFSA, about that small American bureaucratic tragedy of a form, you'll understand these numbers. The FAFSA asks a set of questions. It decides whether you're paying for college on your own or whether your parents are supposed to help you. Many students, it declares, have parents who can help them based on their income. Not based on their income, based on the age of the student, sorry. Their income, though, can be rather substantial. A family could be making $100,000 a year. The student, therefore, is not going to qualify for any financial aid. But if the student's transgender and has come out and told that to their parents, they may very well be estranged from the family and receiving no support. There's almost nothing to be done about that under our current rules. And so that student is locked out of receiving financial aid, anything else but loans. And here we are. People with children, people who've served in the military, former foster youth, and people who've left the prison system for college, something that we're increasingly encouraging people to do. These are all sort of special categories and special programs, all having higher rates of experiencing homelessness in college. Now, sometimes we publish a study and we put it in inside higher ed for some coverage, and then the commenters start. I know you're not supposed to read the comments, but I read the comments and then I develop hypotheses as a scientist and go and test them. So one of the commenters on one of these articles said the following: if these students are going to be homeless in college, maybe they really shouldn't be in college at all. Maybe they should drop out of college and go work at McDonald's until they have enough money to go to college. Another one said, if they're going to be in college and be homeless, they should really work hard in school. Okay, like that's going to solve the problem. So what I did was we started putting time use surveys into our studies, right? To take a look, to see, are these students going to class? Are these students working? Because the other most popular thing is if they're homeless, they should get a job. And do you know what we found out? Students who don't have their basic needs met study as many hours and attend as much class as students who do. They also work just as often, although a greater proportion of them are in the labor force, but they're currently unemployed because they cannot find work. They also tend to work at jobs with lower wages. But where the real distinction is in their sleep. They sleep far less than students who have their basic needs met. And there, I think you know what happens, right? The student who does not sleep will not perform as well in your classroom. The student who does not sleep is more likely to fall asleep when they come into your classroom. Things will not compute as quickly for them. So, I really don't think the McDonald's route is going to be the solution here. Now, the interviews that we've done with these students have led to one finding in particular that I find the most troubling and that I really think that you all can help with. And that is this: when we ask them, how did this happen? Tell us the story of how this happened. They will, without fail, craft a narrative in which they are to blame. They will explain their bad decisions. They will say, I wish I coulda. We have taught people in this country that if they're poor, it is their fault. Their bootstraps just didn't work well enough. And the consequence of that, unfortunately, is that it leads very quickly to hopelessness. Hopelessness is devastating. When you are hopeless and you see no future in front of you and you believe that you yourself are to blame, it's hard to get away from you. When you understand what's happened around you, when you understand the structure that has put you into this situation, when you understand that you are one of tens of thousands, if not millions, of students in the same situation around the country, I'm not saying you feel better, but you're more likely to feel angry and feel like you want to do something about it. And that's what we've watched happening to students through the Real College movement. We have watched as students have said, oh my goodness, it's not just me. If you can bring their attention as a faculty member to the fact that this is not their personal failing, if you can sit down with the student who you happen to pass by in the hallway as you're cleaning at night and sit down with them and help them to know they are not alone, they will not only be more likely to make it to the next day and to stay in your school, but they're more likely to become part of the solution. And we got to do that. Now, I love the value statements here and all the things that go along with it. I think that they really do echo a lot of what we've learned works. And the together part is a very big deal. These challenges are way bigger. I mean, I've just described a new economics of college that is broken at so many levels. The only way those things will get fixed is if we together take very substantial actions. Let me talk about just a few of them. Like I said, I'm Russell's opening act, so he's going to tell you how to actually do these things. Yeah, no pressure. All right, students are humans first. Students are humans first. Imagine if every day when you walked into your classroom, that's the first thing that you said to yourself. It took me years to start actually using my own research findings in my teaching. But once I did and I walked in with that, I'm telling you, the room changed. Once I understood that when I saw that student fall asleep in the class, that I had something that I could do, that I could even just look at that student a little bit differently because I had to recognize his own humanity. I did not start to give away A's. I started to be able to help them to get A's. My grandmother always told me that what I do for a living, sociology, is the statement of the obvious. And perhaps this is. But let's be honest, academia is not kind to humans. We make these assumptions that if they got through the door here, they must already have these things met. They must already be able to do all this stuff. They must already have the conditions of learning in place. No, because you don't put them through a months and months long application and charge them big fees to test their wealth. Right? You don't do lots of gatekeeping here, which is why America loves you. So the humans come in the door. Russell will be talking about a culture of caring, and we think this is absolutely essential because it scales up those individual moments. A culture of caring is not just about what a given program does. A culture of caring, when it's working, takes over an institution. And it changes the actual jobs that you have on a daily basis, which is why it needs to be the product of a very thoughtful conversation. I got to hear and was delighted to hear that I'm in front of a unionized group. That's awesome. Okay, that's awesome. And Russell knows, if you read the report, we had to comment in his report that his culture of caring was created in a non-unionized environment. I want to understand how y'all will create your culture of caring. And I think it's so important because the other thing that a union does is it recognizes that you are also humans and that you deserve respect and that you deserve power. And I think that that power can be negotiated with the students' needs and you all can thrive together. But I think it will take work. You need to ask questions. You're being invited to ask questions, okay? There's so much information in front of you. I am amazed. I mean, you have a comms department and a marketing department that greatly surpasses any place I've ever worked. Yeah. Really, okay. But like the mere fact that you've even been given the resource list and that there's so much on the resource list tells you how far ahead of the game you are. It also tells you and reassures you that you all are not being asked to be turned into social workers here, right? This is not the Green River Social Service Agency. This is Green River College. And what you're doing by doing these things is you're using another tool to help your students actually complete. That's all it is. But the way that you're going to add to that resource list is by you all, as thoughtful people who come here every day, asking questions. Why don't we have X? Could we do this differently? Right? Maybe we have this resource, but my students can't access it. Why does it work this way? We've gotten to this place. You have these resources because people asked questions. I met a woman this morning who was telling me while I was signing her book that she started asking questions about the United Way and how they might be able to help here. And in a moment, I'm going to talk with you about some of the resources you have here, thanks to that person asking questions. One of the biggest challenges that we face in this country right now is that we do have a set of programs that can support students. One of the most important ones is SNAP. But most people believe, and I don't think it's an accident that they believe this, most people believe that college students are ineligible. The reason I don't think it's an accident is the very starting point of the discussion about college students says college students are not eligible. And then it goes, but, and it has a whole series of exceptions, right? If you're trying to encourage people to get something, you don't start with, no, you cannot have it. But if you jump up and down 3 times on one foot and then you go through fire, you can have it. No, that's basically how it's written, okay? The thing about that is because it's written that way and because there's so much misinformation about that and because you do have to jump through so many hoops, you actually have to connect them to the benefits at the college level. We can't just assume that they will go off in their life and just somehow magically get that support. And the GAO earlier this year demonstrated for us that if you compare the number of people who need this help to those who are getting it, there's a massive disparity. So, you've got some cool resources. I said I was happy to be here in part because of the partnerships that you all have. And yesterday, I was in Seattle working with the United Way of King County as they further support the people who are working in the benefits hubs. There are now a set of benefits hubs on college campuses around King County. And what they're doing is absolutely important. For years, we have understood that providing access to public benefits on college campuses is good work and it's hard work. We've also understood that community college staff are already strapped. You already have like 15 things you got to do every day. So asking you to simply take that on, that's a lot. So partnerships are how you get this work done. And that's exactly what the benefits hubs represent. This morning, we announced that we received a grant at the Hope Center from Arnold Ventures, which is one of the nation's larger philanthropies for education, that is going to support our effort to work with UWKC and your colleges to find out what that important work of the benefits hubs actually does for your students. So we're going to be spending a year learning how the benefits hubs actually work, who does what, how do students learn about the benefits hubs, what supports do they really receive, and then we're going to turn to actually look and see if, for example, your students are more likely to draw down SNAP benefits. Maybe they have reduced health care expenses, right? Maybe they're more likely to have their children living with them in a stable situation because of something that they learned from your benefits hubs. And of course, your bottom line, maybe they're more likely to stay in school. So this is an exciting effort, but you got to do more than just know about it. You got to actually refer students to it. Another issue, housing. I've been doing work in Tacoma with the Tacoma Housing Authority, which has been providing Section 8 housing vouchers to the community college students who are homeless or near homeless. It's a really cutting-edge program. It's very exciting, and the King County Housing Authority is now looking at it. I'm very optimistic that you'll be able to get some of this support for your students. But when you do, you cannot assume that just because a housing voucher exists in a world for a student, the student will get to use it. We have to bridge really difficult systems for students. If you think the FAFSA is hard, you should fill out the HUD application, right? So the thing about it is this is very efficient. If we do a little at the college side and the housing authority does something on their side, together we get it done and there's mutually beneficial outcomes. You've got a number of other great things coming down the pike. The new emergency assistance grant program that's coming from the state level can help you to expand the Gator Pledge. I want to challenge you, no matter where you're at with your emergency aid, and I think you heard in my bio that I'm pretty obsessed with emergency aid, I want you to make it move as fast as possible. Even 24 hours can be too long for some of these students. We all know that. You know that if your own child was in crisis, you would be wanting to get them the money within a matter of hours, not a matter of days. It's also really important to take momentum where you can find it. You've had a bunch of wins here in the state. You've got some wins coming from the King County Promise. Use that to expand the network of people in this community who understand what you do and are connected to it. You need everyone at the table. You need the private sector at the table. There are so many things of value that people can offer that your students need. Somebody can reduce the price of diapers for your students? Great, grab it. Diapers are a college completion issue. I urge you to take information about these resources and consider putting it directly on the syllabus. Believe it or not, students do read the syllabus. And I can prove it because we've added these statements of caring to the syllabus about their food and housing security at about 500 colleges around the country. And the people on the other side who the students are being referred to are seeing the referrals rise. People are coming in. The students think this is so cool because they're thinking this is something useful in that syllabus, right? No offense to the rest of your syllabus, but seriously, okay? They're gonna think you're pretty cool if you do this. If you need more information on it, on our website, we have a whole guide. Couple more things. I want to urge you, I'm glad you had a whole year on quantitative data and you got a whole year on qualitative data. Data rocks. Okay, science matters. Yeah. Lift it up. When you get your data next spring from us, from that Real College survey, I want every single one of you to show it to someone who does not work here, someone who does not know. Put it on your Facebook, tweet it. Literally, I don't care. You might think, I don't have anybody influential in my life. You're all influential. The more people who know that this is the crisis that American higher education faces, the better. They will be more likely to vote in your favor for your college. And that's where I gotta end. Advocacy. Pick your favorite topic. I'm not telling you which party has the solutions. I'm just telling you there are people out there who know that food insecurity is a big issue for college students, and then there are the people who just think that we have to give them more financial literacy. There is very little evidence that students are facing these challenges because they lack financial literacy. They lack money. And we need to make decisions about higher education and its resources based on those facts. Next fall could be a turning point in all of American higher education. We've had the same broken financing system for higher education for 50 years, and you're living with the effects. For the first time in American history, we are having a vibrant national debate and a presidential race that pays attention. So the thing you gotta do is vote. Again, I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm just telling you, if you have a problem with today's system, that is probably the single most powerful thing that you can do. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to Q&A.
Amazing.
Cool. All right.
Am I on? I am on. Okay, we're going to get situated here. It's time for questions and answers. Questions. So we have some options. You have a green index card there. If you'd like to write a question down and have it picked up, I think we've got some runners in the area that can pick up the index cards. Or I especially encourage you, there are microphones in the area. Please come bring yourself to the microphone, ask questions of Sara, and I'm going to buy a little time by doing something as we get ourselves over to the chairs, and I think they're going to rise up yeah, there we go. You know, we're height strong here, but we probably would have hit our heads on the screen. So I have in my hand special pins that we give out here at Green River College. They're gators. And we were explaining this to Sara and Russell last evening, and if I may, I would like to offer a gator pin to Sara for her time with us today. There's more to come. We will be taking a hard break in about 15 minutes. So we have 15 minutes for Q&A. We're having a hard 15-minute break coming up. So for all of you that are thinking the bio time is coming, hang on. And I should remind you, there's bathrooms on both sides of the building, not just one area there. And of course, we have exits going all sorts of ways. And then Sara's going to be with us after our break doing some interactive activities, which I'm really jazzed about. I think you're going to really enjoy them. And see how much time I'm buying you. Write those questions down and get up to those microphones. So if I may, should I pin it or just hand it? Can I pin you?
You can pin it.
Okay. I get to pin Sara. I'm not really good at this. I should probably tell you this. You know how they do it in the air? Would you like it on the?
I don't care.
Okay.
Just put it there.
Is it all right for me to poke a hole in your?
Yes, you can poke a hole.
Okay, because it's kind of.
I got up this morning and opened my suitcase and said, "Oh my God, I brought a green dress. This is totally an accident." Guess I'm on the same page. I've never been bitten by a gator, so.
Thank you for being a gator.
Thank you so much. That's awesome.
Okay. So I'm helping with the arrangements here. Thank you. There's Sal. I knew he was lurking somewhere this morning. Okay. He's got the cues. So please come to the mics. Who'd like to ask the first question? Come on now. All right, I see Allison up. Allison's coming. Or Allison's exiting. No, Allison is coming.
I agree with you when you hit that starting point of 1981, David Stockman, Ronald Reagan. We had Prop 13 in 1979, a few years earlier in California, and we've been on this roll ever since of cut taxes, cut taxes, cut taxes. I went to school in the early 70s. My tuition at a public university was $84 a semester in California. Our political culture has changed, and you touched on it without using those words just in your last few moments, but what do we need to do? What do you think we need to do to change our political culture to where we actually care about people?
I mean, I think the first thing is we need a lot more people in office who've had the lived experience of being a regular person in this country, right? I mean, the vast majority of people who are now serving us in Washington attended very selective colleges that know nothing about what you're doing here. And I further think, though, that we've been buying this rhetoric that says that, you know, you cut taxes because it makes economic sense, it puts money back in people's pockets, except it doesn't. And if you really think about how you generate a return on investment, you have to first invest, right? So it's one thing to have lower taxes, but when you're making no money because the economy is not doing well, how does that help you, right? So there's this book called The Race Between Education and Technology, which talks about all the innovations that happened in the 20th century and very clearly demonstrates that those things which we all enjoyed, right? I mean, most of you are holding an iPhone. We wouldn't have it if we hadn't made high school free. That's one of the most important things that we did. We expanded access to education. And we didn't do it saying to ourselves, well, goodness, what if we make high school free and a wealthy person goes and gets a free education? If we had hesitated, I mean, it took 80 years. It's not like it just happened overnight. But what would have happened if we'd made another decision and not allowed people in this country to get a high school degree? Now, there are people who are still not finishing, and we need to grapple with the realities of the way that we're funding public secondary education. It's highly unequal. But I don't think there's been anybody who said, boy, that was a mistake. We should really go back to the way things were and send more people, after elementary school just straight out to work. So, I think we got to change this conversation, though, and get it to be more grounded in people's realities and ask ourselves, when we listen to the next debate, who's talking like they actually know something about what's happening on the ground?
Thanks.
Hello, my name's Katie Shaw. I teach geology and oceanography. And kind of leading from what you were just saying about high school being freely available, part of the justification that we hear for funding higher education has to do with the fact that students and employers see a higher educational degree as the key to getting a job. I have a quibble with that,
Yeah.
a big quibble.
Yep.
I have two, one of which is there are other parts of getting a higher education degree. But the one that I think throws a serious monkey wrench into long-term planning for this, and in particularly in getting financing for higher education, is that higher education so far correlates with getting a job because not everybody has a higher education degree. So as college becomes more and more available to more and more people, employers see it as less and less relevant to giving a person a job. I am concerned that the push to get people a degree in order to get them a job makes itself irrelevant in the medium and definitely in the long term. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. So this comes up in a lot of my classes. My undergraduates will say to me, I don't want everybody to get a college degree. My degree won't be worth anything. So, first, I always ask them to take a moment and just listen to themselves, right? Because what we're arguing is that we should ensure that inequality exists so that we can have something better than someone else. And I get it. They want that payoff. And we've built an entire system around the idea of that payoff. If we didn't believe that there'd be a payoff, we couldn't justify today's student loan system. We believe that all those returns are private returns. They're returns to the individual. And it's not an accident. It's because that's where the scientists have focused. We measure what we care about, we count what we care about, and we haven't been counting the social and public returns. One of the great things that a college education is associated with is better health. I've been urging people since I've been here to really think about that. That's not just about the fact that people end up with more money and then have more money to spend on their health care. It's because you learn things in college, including how to navigate systems. And if there's anything you got to do to get health care in America, it's navigate systems. But the other thing is, look at what we're talking about here. If you help people to reduce their odds of being food insecure or depressed or any of those other things because you have them here, you know where they are, they come here every day, you're increasing the returns on the health side. Not by keeping someone behind, right? But simply by using your community college as a site for intervention and public health. But you're also right to say we do a lot more than this. And I think that we're really wrong to have lost sight of the fact that the reason why education matters so much is that the more you learn, the more you can do. And it's not just doing for money, right? So we are educating for democracy, right? We are educating for communities. We are better off. And it's just that we're trapped in this very narrow frame. We're also trapped in a frame created by this idea of meritocracy. And you probably in the last couple of weeks have seen a growing number of articles about questioning the notion of what is meritocracy. And it's because there's a new book out with the title Meritocracy. So I'll just reference you to that. I think it's excellent. I think it really grabs onto the assertion that is so widely held in higher ed, right? That we really should only be able to get through anything in this country by virtue of what we call hard work. Especially in a country that labels staying at home with your children and doing childcare as not work, we should really be questioning these notions of what count as hard work.
So I have some questions from the field. One I'm going to hold to the end because I'm not sure whether you want to answer that, dealing with some particular presidential candidate options. Oh, great. Is there somebody waiting? Okay.
Sorry, I sat down.
Excellent.
So I've heard a lot in the media about this pressure from college students that's causing a higher rate of suicide. Has anybody studied yet this correlation of this hopelessness, of homeless, home insecurity and food insecurity as it relates to these higher rates that we're seeing?
Yeah, this is such an important question. I'm glad you brought mental health into it. So the answer is a tiny bit, but not much, but we're going there. So most of the attention paid to mental health of college students is paid to the mental health of college students at four-year institutions. Most of the resources available to students, the places with the best counseling centers and real support, are at some of the wealthiest institutions. And yet it's very clear that if we assess depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, all of that, it is incredibly present in community colleges, the places where you have the fewest mental health resources. We are seeing, so we have a bunch of studies in the field where we go beyond the survey that we're doing with your students, where we're collecting a lot of data as we measure the effects of, for example, helping students to get housing. And the health outcomes, the mental health outcomes in particular, are something we're paying close attention to. So I don't have results at this point. We're not far enough along to know if helping secure someone's housing reduces the odds of them feeling suicidal. That would be miraculous if it did. What I can tell you is that one of the hardest parts of our work has been that while those surveys are in the field, we get on a daily basis the responses coming back, and the rates of suicidal ideation are staggeringly high. So I don't want to expose one of the districts, but we're working with a very large district in the southern half of the United States, and 40% of the 2,000 students who we surveyed, all of whom had a zero expected family contribution, 40% of them exhibited signs of suicidal ideation. We had to stop as a research team, halt our work for a couple of days in order to work with the college to figure out, while protecting their confidentiality, how to get them help as fast as possible. I think these are very scary times, and I really worry we're being distracted by arguments about, for example, technology. There are those who claim the reason people are depressed is because of their iPhones. I get it. Okay, I do get that we're doing this constant comparison, and this Facebook thing can actually really lead people to see other people living what look like better lives. And I understand all of that. But I really don't think it's the technology. I think it's the austerity. And I want to say one other thing, because I didn't finish responding over here. I want to say one thing about employers. Employers need to learn how to hire. It's cheap to look and use a credential as the marker of whether somebody can do a job. I used to think it was okay. Now I'm an employer. I do hiring all the time. We spent a bunch of time since I've been here talking about all the hiring I got to do. I don't look at a college credential anymore and think it means almost anything, especially if it comes from one of these elite schools. Then I want to know who actually did the work, okay? Right? They get so much support, and I ask them to put sentences together on a page, and they can't write a memo. So I actually think that what we need to do is have a hard conversation with the employers about the PD that they need to learn how to better hire, how to vet people for what they really can do, and to recognize that there's talent in all sorts of corners. They say they want a diverse workforce. I think that's how they're going to get it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a quick one which I can throw off because Sarah wouldn't know the answer to this. It's this awesome student resource reference guide available in an electronic version that's geared towards students. We're working on that. We'll also be sending it out as a PDF to all of you. So I've solved one question there. So here's a general question, but it relates to getting more involved. And there's a question from the floor which asks you, how can I get involved in supporting your work in our community?
Cool. Yeah. There's probably several different ways. So, I mean, one of the important things that happens when we do these projects, so we really don't like to just kind of come in and say, the objective scientists are here, right? Collect data and then say, program works, program doesn't work. That's such a waste of time. And the error rate is high, right? So we don't want to have a false positive or a false negative, right? We want to really accurately understand the program. So, I mean, the first thing is support your benefits hubs. Support them. You can support them any number of ways, right? You can help them fundraise. You can grow the emergency aid support. You can help the people who work there just get through the day. They're going to be doing some really hard work. I'm sure they already are. And support them by helping them have students who come through. The only way we can evaluate the impact of the program is if students actually use the program. Right? If they don't use it in large numbers, we're not going to be able to detect anything. The other thing, though, is to build the appetite for information about the program. Right? And so once there is an evaluation at the end of the day, we always hope that people are primed and ready to be ready to use that information and make change with it. So, you know, most people probably have no idea that you all even have this resource. There's a woman in Washington, D.C. today who's been saying for years that colleges need to have benefits access on campus. And when we tweeted today that we have this new grant to do this work, she said it's like Christmas morning. That tells you what kind of wonk she is, right? But that's how badly she has wanted this for community colleges. So also talk about it. And then I think, honestly, the most important thing is that once we have the data from the survey and we have handed you this data, use it. Use it, use it, use it, use it, use it. Use it, talk to your students about it. Take the report and share it with them, honestly. Ask them to tell you their stories. Ask them what's going on. Ask them what other support they need. And then fundraise with it. I've seen brilliant fundraising with it. You know, I don't know, do you all already have an employee donation campaign?
Yes, and I'll actually be mentioning that before we go a lunch break a little bit later.
It's wonderful, and we've seen places, I mean, you know, the great thing about emergency aid is I'm not saying to you, you got to donate $10,000 for a single scholarship, right? If you can help a student.
Although that's nice for anybody.
It is nice.
Bob, we're not saying you can't.
But I'm working on emergency aid because, to be honest, I think that the right amount of money, right size to what a student needs in the moment, delivered at the right time with the right message, has a huge impact. And so for the college to be able to say, yes, we're going to help you fix your car so you can come here, that's massive. And especially if you're able to turn that around for them quickly and not subject them to another FAFSA-like process, they'll be so pleasantly surprised that I'm willing to bet that when they graduate from Green River, they're going to send you a check. So, you know, that's the stuff. And it's very different work than I know that many of us who, you know, got degrees and went into teaching thought we would be doing. But remember what our K-12 peers are doing right now. They're posting about their classrooms on Donors Choose and saying, we don't have books. I need money for markers. Yeah. All right, my big question is, are we headed there? We're going to go back to teaching every fall and we're going to have to set up a sad webpage? No, I hope that we can avoid that.
Excellent. Now I'm going to ask you this last question, but this last question is a cue for us to have our 15-minute break. Okay. It's a hard break, so we're coming back, so we're going to do some really great stuff Sarah has planned for us. So I'm going to ask you the question to honor the questions from the field. I recommend the person who asked this question take it up with her during our break. In your opinion, who among the presidential candidates has the best thought-out plan for higher ed, particularly community colleges?
I can answer this.
Oh, okay.
No problem.
All right.
No problem.
In 30 seconds or less, and then we can continue.
30 seconds or less.
Okay.
Here's the thing, folks. I actually we've never even made higher ed a voting issue, right? We've never even made the stuff that we've been talking here today a voting issue. We're not going to get enough information, okay, to say it's Warren's plan, it's Biden's plan, it's Harris's plan. Pick at least a set of people, and once we're done with the primary, pick somebody who's got a plan versus somebody who doesn't. Because what's happening behind the scenes and these are my friends, so I'm telling you, they all have teams lined up to go immediately to Washington to sort the details, which even if they promise you the details now, are not going to be the details then. And they will get to work. So what you're doing when you're picking a candidate is you are picking a team of people. And so you should watch how they behave. You should watch how they talk about college students. There is at least one who calls them kids and says that free college is like fairy dust. Sorry. Go back to the 80s. So, but the rest of them, they're having some good and thoughtful discussions, and that's where I'd say we need your energy at. Pick people who even care enough to have plans.
Nice answer. Well played. Okay, we're having a 15-minute, let's do a hard 15-minute break. So about 7 minutes after 11, we're going to start our interactive session with Sara. Come back.
I love the break thing in between. I think that's wonderful. And hopefully that's going to give you a chance to focus for a few minutes on a couple, as she said, of activities. I think that reflection, both about who you are and who your students are, is really important stage setting. And that I wish that we were able to do this more at the start of every single term. Because who we are and what we're going through changes constantly, and who our students are and what they're going through changes as well. So I want to give you a chance to do a little bit of writing. It's reflective writing at your own table. You'll be able to share it at your own table if you want to. And if you are willing, when we have a little bit of a group discussion, I'll give the bravest among you a chance to also share out. But what I want you to start by doing is asking yourself, who are you? And see if you can't write a 6-word sentence that describes you.
You have some blank paper in each of your folders.
You have paper.
To write some things.
This is hard, but you can do it. You can think about who you are in this community. You can think about who you are broadly. I'll give you mine, and I'm going to embarrass myself because the first word is apt, but I can't say it. It's indefatigable, scholar activist fighting for students. Go for yours. You got about, let's take 2 or 3 minutes. As you finish, whatever you've got is good enough. I want you to turn to the folks at your table and tell them, who are you in your 6 words, and who are your students? And as you go around the table and you introduce yourself to the people with you, and you introduce your students to the people with you, I want you to think about the similarities and differences both between who's at your table, right, among you, the diversity among you. I also want you to think about any differences between who you are and who your students are. Go ahead and take a good 5 minutes or so for conversation. Would a couple of you brave folks come up to a microphone and share with us your 6 words about your students, please? This will work best if you're brave. Couple of folks.
Everybody be brave.
Come on.
Mics, who would like to share?
You just need a mic. Come on up.
6-word statement about
Come
students.
on up. Come on
on.
up.
All right,
Yay.
Elizabeth. Liz is coming up. Come on.
How's it going?
If you'll tell us who you are and then tell
That's
us
it.
about your students, I'd be so grateful. You want to start back here?
Yes, I'm Noah Down with the College Foundation. Tenaciously working towards a brighter future.
Beautiful.
Okay, we're sharing just our students.
Just your students.
Okay. My students are inspiring life fighters, resistant and persistent victors.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Back here.
Hi, I'm Shamarki, and I work for Trio. Trio works. All right, for our students, I got caring, humble, outgoing, smart, success, funny, and I want to add one more, hopeful.
Hopeful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Even though you're a rule breaker.
All right, for students, well, my name's Isaiah Johnson. I work for the Auburn School District. I am the... I've never gotten that before. That was awesome. And I am the Director of Equity, Family Engagement, and Outreach. And thank you for allowing me to be here. This is awesome. And so this is great to hear all this information. So for students, prior to me in this position, I was 11 years principal at Cascade Middle School in Auburn School District. So, so this role's new for me, but I'm excited to be on this new journey. All right, so for students, inspiring, motivating, caring, amazing, awesome, and my man stole my word, hopeful.
Awesome.
Because despite what you think, our kids are more hopeful than what you think. And that's what kept me going and kept me energized in my as a principal. So I want you guys to understand, our kids are hopeful.
Good. We want them to keep it that way. There's a science of optimism. It's quite a time to be leading something called the Hope Center, right? But we're not doing it because we're naive. There's a science of positive psychology. It works. And so, yeah, we want to keep them there. Do we have a couple more back here?
Yeah, in the back.
Hi, I'm David Larson. I'm the Dean of Stuff and Student Services.
Nice to meet you, David.
I didn't want to come up here, so
How nice
this is
of you
what
to be
I
up
wrote.
there, David. Yeah.
Survivors pressing on beyond cages. Yeah, that was good, wasn't it? It wasn't me.
That's awesome. Is that one more I see? Great.
Hi, I'm Danny. I'm speaking for the bees. And those are wasps in the images earlier, just FYI. My students are many people with dreams and skills.
Wow. Okay.
I had one right here, please. I'm right here, over here. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure you can get that one in too. My name is Maggie. I represent environmental safety, which is a new service here at Green River College. My students here, actually, if you look around, is every person in this room are my students. And I just want to say safety rocks.
Awesome. Okay. So hang on to what you wrote, right? I want you to think about it. Like I said, it's so easy to get lost during the term. And it's easy to lose yourself. And it's easy to lose your sense of optimism for your students and your grounding in those realities. The next thing that I want you to do, so I mentioned the syllabus earlier, right? You think about how a semester, how a term begins with students. They come into the classroom and we greet them with this document. In many ways, it resembles some sort of legal document, contract. It's got terms and conditions. You know, you're supposed to sign up, you're supposed to show up. This is how you get a grade. These are all the things that you have to do. I want you to think about what it would be like if the students here were greeted with something a little different. Instead of the syllabus being the first thing that they received, what if they received a note from you? What do you wish that your students knew about your hopes for them as they start the new year? Just begin a letter. I know you're not going to get that far. It might be something you continue later. Some of you are not in the classroom every day. That's okay. Imagine if you had a chance to send a short email to the students as they begin the term. What do you want them to know? Go ahead and do some writing. Okay, as you write, I'm going to give you one more prompt, something to think about. You might make notes alongside, you might make notes underneath, you might just make mental notes. What are those things that you're hoping for them? And how can they turn into action? Is there anything that you can do personally to help them? Are those things the college needs to do? Are they things the state needs to do? I just want you to think a little bit beyond what the hope is and what the action would necessarily be. When you're ready, find at least one other person at your table who you're ready to share at least part of what you wrote with. You don't have to share the whole thing. Somebody that you can talk to a little bit in particular about what you're hoping for and what actions you think need to happen. I'm going to, again, give you about 5 minutes or so for those conversations. And if you think that someone has a great idea or something that really needs to be said aloud, mark that so that we can share it in the larger discussion. All right, so again, I'm looking for a couple of brave volunteers to talk about their hopes for your students and what they think needs to happen in terms of action. You know, if your students were sitting quietly, you would tell them, come on, just share. There's no right, wrong answer here. I mean, we're just interested in what you're thinking. Couple of folks. Perfect, thank you.
So I don't teach here. I work for college relations, but I do have 2 children that are students here right now.
Wonderful.
And in college relations, this is kind of a thing that I think about a lot because we communicate to and for the students. So it's something I've been doing a deep, I'm glad you asked this question.
Yeah.
I've been doing a deep think about this for like about a year.
Cool.
So.
He was really ready. It's been a year of thinking.
I don't really
ready.
feel ready right now, but so I would say to my children and my students that I represent here that this moment in history is unlike any other in human history. Your class will arrive at a change that no class before it will recognize or understand. Pay attention inside and out, and you will understand that change. Green River College is a place where you belong. We want you here so that you can say that the future is a place that belongs to you.
Wow. Okay. Well, what do we need to do to make that happen?
Empower students to finish. And also listen to the students and strive to constantly feel where they're coming from and know how they arrived there. And that's a constant process.
It is.
Don't just like set a goal, check off the goal when it's achieved. It's a process, embody it.
This is wonderful. So I'll tell you, it's a real skill to learn to listen to someone and not just hear what they're saying, but to see what they're feeling. Yeah. And we're here today because my research team started doing that in 2008. So what brought us here today was that I was trained to just ask the questions in the sequence that I have them written down, okay? And we discovered that when we sent people out to do that with college students, we did not learn very much. And so we retooled and we learned what's called affective interviewing, which means follow the affect, follow the emotion. And it's when we did that that a student opened her mouth and said, the problem I'm having in college is that I haven't eaten in 2 days. There is a direct line between that moment and right here. I highly urge everyone, it's a difficult thing to do. It's exhausting, frankly, to sit and listen in that way, and you'll get to the bottom of what you need to. Thank you so much. Yes.
I really hate to follow that. My name is Rochelle Mitchell.
Yes, thank you, Rochelle, for being up and speaking for David earlier.
Thanks. Yep, I teach math and stuff. So my letter to students would say, dear student, my hopes for you are to have a successful quarter, and then expand on that, to feel safe and welcome in my classroom, to get to know at least one other student in this classroom, so that connection piece, and to leave each day knowing that you matter to me.
Beautiful. Thank you. Do you have an action? No, he has no action. Okay. Over here.
Hi, I'm Kristen Higgins. I teach English.
Hello. I think that my biggest thing for my students, both in terms of how they view themselves and how we as a society treat them, how we as an institution treat them, I think it's getting away from deficit thinking, emphasizing the strengths that they bring with them and that we are helping them to develop, and affirming those strengths through all the things that we do.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you. I think we'll do one last one. Yes.
My name is also Rochelle Mitchell. It's weird.
Wow.
Did you just flip me off?
Welcome to Green River College.
That is not. And this Rochelle Mitchell's letter. God, it's very loud. Dear students, I hope you get enough rest. I hope you are safe and warm and healthy. I hope you have enough capacity to enjoy being here at least a little bit and maybe be able to take a walk in the woods behind campus. I hope that you remember that no matter what you have done or haven't done, that you are enough, no matter what. And that you find a tiny bit of joy every day. It's very hard, I know, but we'll practice. We'll practice in here. I teach English, so this is a little long-winded. I'm not sorry. I'll never be sorry. I hope you find out what success means to you. It's different for everybody. It can be tiny, it can be big. That's okay. It may be finding a place to sleep tonight. It may be finding something to eat. It may be branding your business. Either way, how can I help you do that? How? We can do this together. And that's my letter for my students.
So I want you to imagine with me as an action. What if this is how you greeted them? They go through so much shifts. I can tell you, having followed students from month to month to month over years as they go through for school, that just the start of term isn't enough. What happens if you bring at least some of those intentions and those hopes into the classroom, regardless of what you teach? You might think, well, that has nothing to do with the content that I am putting into place here, and I'm trying to help them learn it. And I'm going to tell you this: they're not hearing you if you don't take these actions. So I want to end by simply saying how grateful I am that you're doing this work, for how far along you already are in doing it, and for all of the attention that you just paid on, what is it, a Tuesday morning, right, together, to actually try and build on the success you've already had and do more for your real college students. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much. Make your plane. I don't want to. So, that was an amazing morning. I leaned into Sarah a few minutes ago and I said, I've never seen a room of 500 people be so quiet and focused on thinking about the hopes that they have for our students. I kind of got choked up when I was saying that. And again, just now. I'm here now to transition us as Tanya feverishly drives Sarah to the airport, hopefully not getting too many tickets while speeding. But a couple of things. In this room today, there are about 121 of us, faculty and staff, who contribute to our college foundation. And that has amounted to about $46,000 a year going toward emergency support, scholarship monies, and so on for our students. I mean, you can do the math in terms of how many particular heads that might mean per year. But if you want to know more about our college foundation during the lunch break, and if you'd like to become a donor, some of us do it through employee deduction during our paycheck, each paycheck. Others do different kinds of things, or how you can help, or to learn more about what the foundation does. During the lunch break, the foundation actually has a table out here in the lobby area. So I wanted to alert you to that. The other thing I wanted to share with all of you, because some of you have been having fun at the tables. This is a Fia. Where's Fia? This is a Fia Eliason Creek brainchild. Please take as many pens as you'd like. Phil Denman tells me we ordered 10,000. No, that's not true. But what you'll see here is a two-sided information pullout about our mission and our vision, our core themes, right? What we do here at this institution. But on the other side is data about our students, total head count and so on. This is what I call like a little factoid pen. Apparently this one doesn't light up. We do have pens apparently that light up. But this one's got the pulling out thing. Why do we have these this year? because this coming spring, Northwest will be here to learn about Green River, and we have such an amazing, compelling story to share with them about the past 7 years. Our 7-year accreditation visit will occur April 29th and 30th and May 1st. And these visits are opportunities for an institution to sing their song. I want you to just take a moment. Now, I know some of us weren't here back in 2013. But I want you to think back to 2013. Apparently, a lot of you were. I read all those service award numbers earlier. Think back to this college in 2013. Think about the college in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, and now. What a story you have to tell. What a remarkable story we have to share with the Northwest Commission. Be excited about this. Be excited about this. And this pen is our cheat sheet. And just about the time you get to all that in your head, I know the college mission and vision and so on, we'll be working on a new strategic plan, so who knows what it'll be. But for our accreditation visit, we will know that information. Now, I also want to just take a moment before, apparently I've been told Conference Services is coming up on this stage and they're going to manage the crowds for lunch. Okay. Are you the lunch wrangler? You're the lunch wrangler? Okay. I just wanted to take a moment. There are a couple of people that I introduced earlier this morning and said they would be here eventually. We do have the mayor of Kent, Dana Ralph, has arrived. I think we also thank you for being here today. We have a lot of students that come from Kent. And what a great partner. And I know we have some others that were introduced earlier. We have Bruce DeJong, we have John Schneider, Jim Tanas wandered in earlier. Oh, yeah, there's a man. Okay, so some are here as well. Russell is with us this afternoon. He is going to take us through some remarkable things. Of course, I got to cheat and see it ahead of time. Please hang in there, because this afternoon brings it down to the level of our hearts and the ground at Green River College.